Hello, beautiful friends. Keith Anthony Blanchard here, center of light, center of divine unfoldment and reinforcement. Strapping on my brother and sister astronauts as we launch for inner space. I have a fantastic guest tonight by the name of Mr. Brad Johnson, and we're going to be speaking about the golden age 2037. I heard a presentation of his sometime in the recent past on YouTube, I believe it was. And I was just wowed by the whole presentation, where he comes from inside. I love seeing people who are truly connected to everything that is anything at all. A couple of quick adverts before we get down to Center of Light Radio business. Christmas night, I will be doing a presentation on the life of this master, on the life of Jesus, who became of the Christ. The picture you're looking at, the image on the left is of the Shroud of Turin. The image on the right was manifested by Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, the gentleman you see in the picture behind me when I show myself again. He manifested this picture and told the woman who he manifested it for, this is a picture of that will match the Shroud of Turin, and it's exactly what Jesus looked like. I'm going to be presenting about where did he go in all those missing years. Some people say we're not supposed to know. I think that's pretty important information. Also going to be talking about my experience with Christ many years ago when I was released. My consciousness was released from my body, and I was taken to a future event and saw the destiny, I did say that word on purpose, of humanity, where everyone is raising their arms and shouting throngs, and the mantra was Christ, insinuating we are ready, and the Holy Spirit begins to roll down the hills. Just an amazing, amazing experience. So make sure you hear Christmas night for that presentation. Also, I'm going to be doing a Center of Light Christmas party. Have no idea what that's going to be about. I love spontaneity. But I will break out my guitar, my sound system. I'll put some lights up. Why? Just for effect and for fun. We're going to get celebratory. I say we get down to some Center of Light Radio beeswax. Let me tell you a little about my guests. First, I want to drop a group of links in this forum. This group of links is every bit as the interview you're going to hear with my new friend. It keeps Center of Light lit. And finally, let me grab this and let me tell you a little bit about my guest tonight here on Center of Light Radio. Brad Johnson is my guest tonight, and we're speaking about the Golden Age 2037. Yes, that is the year 2037. Brad Johnson, international spiritual teacher, psychic, channeler, healer, and metaphysical researcher, has created this website. We'll get to that shortly. I'm going to post that in a moment. Has created this website to aid those who wish to seek a greater understanding on what is unfolding during this time. A grand shift in awakening and awareness is bringing us into a new earth where the world of spirituality, intuition, kindness, and personal truth will become our way of life through our present day and even greater through our upcoming generations. With Brad Johnson's extensive spiritual knowledge and nearly a decade of deep inner practices, his insight provides an atmosphere of easy to follow teachings that range from a wide variety of topics within the fields of awareness, spirituality, and universal truth. It is the mission of New Earth Teachings to share a vast perspective of insight that will allow you the opportunity to expand and broaden yourself in ways you never thought possible. I'm going to post his website. Make sure you'll stomp all over his page, y'all. As you welcome to Center of Light Radio for the first time, my new friend, Mr. Brad Johnson. Welcome to Center of Light, brother.
Hey, man. How's it going?
I'm just like you, brother. How's your weather there, man? It's a little chilly willy, and you said it was rainy, but it's been a little cold here in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, it's raining buckets here. Yes. So it's not always the most pleasant place to be around, but the energy is nice here.
It's a beautiful sight. I used to live northwest for some time, as you and I talked in the radio green room when I was
Right.
with a band called Fifth Angel. I loved it. I love the rainy. I love the everything looked like little houses tucked in this little alpine mountain set. It was really gorgeous. Brad, let's just get right down to some business, sir. I usually ask my guests three questions. I don't always do it, but when I would like to ask you, how did this all start for you? Usually, there are two motivating factors. One, some people come in with the awareness and the intuition spontaneously. They have it with them when they're a child, that they're connected to something else. Other people, it's pain.
Mhm.
How did this all come about for you, my friend?
It was neither of those, actually. It was not about the idea of me following a spiritual journey when I was younger. I was psychic, but I did not know I had psychic abilities within myself. So I basically just kind of shrugged it off. I was basically raised as Jehovah's Witness, so we never, encouraged the idea of following the psychic path. That was demonism, right? That was following the path of the devil. So I never loved at all that religion whatsoever. No, it was at age 29. It was over 11 years ago, and I just wanted to write a science fiction novel. I wanted to write a novel all about the extraterrestrial presence. I wanted to know about ET awareness. And so I just started doing a lot of research online. I went and discovered more that people talked a lot about ETs and how they're very much a lot like us, and that they believe in a one infinite creator. And through meditation, you can connect with them. And this blew me away because I had never really looked at extraterrestrials in that particular way. And so as I started to find a lot of people just sharing the same kind of information, I decided to go into my local library. I just took out a book called Learn How to Meditate, and I just read it from front cover to back cover. Did a lot of the exercises within it within a matter of a few days. And I went very, very deeply into trance. And I would go into like these kind of like mazes. They're like astral mazes. And you would touch these crystal orbs that were hovering in these rooms. And I would just get these downloads. I would actually feel like electricity surging through my body as I touched it with my astral hands. My physical hands would translate that sensation. It wasn't like an intense, electrical shock or anything like that, but it was like a really good electrical buzzing sensation that I was getting. And I'd go to sleep at night and I would just wake up the next morning knowing things I did not know before. I was just getting all these downloads that, again, from this point on, I'm still trying to decode a lot. So again, 11 years, this entire journey has been happening to me, and I'm still, getting all these downloads and getting all this information and trying to make sense of it all as well too, in the best way that I can. And fortunately, I have help from spirit, so that certainly helps. But after that experience, I started to get into meditation. I started to get into energy healing. I started to get into channeling, and I started looking into other channelers who were online, and they would show me more about what they were doing. Because I'd ask, well, how does this channeling work, right? I just kind of looked at it very much like a journalist and a researcher, and they just started telling me exactly what they did, and I started doing the routines as well too. And I kind of took a few different ideas and molded it into my own idea. And I started doing what's commonly known as automatic writing or channeled writing. And I started connecting to several different consciousnesses on a collective level. Some of them were Pleiadian, some of them were Lyran, some of them were Arcturian, I believe, as well too. And then one of my friends, who was also a channeler, contacted me around December of 2008 and said, "Well, Brad, you have very strong connections with Sirius. I feel like there's a being from Sirius that's trying to connect with you, from the star of Sirius, the dog star, that we're aware of." And he says it'd be a good idea for you to connect with him and see what he wants to tell you. I said, okay, that's fine. And so I went into my state as I usually did. I got into the channeled writing stage, and all of a sudden, Adronis came through, and that's the being that I've been channeling since December of 2008, and he represented a Syrian consciousness. And he revealed himself as saying that I'm a future version of you, 297 years in the future. I've come back at this time to assist in your spiritual evolution. And the good news is that as you spiritually evolve, you will take others with you, and they will spiritually evolve with you together. And that is very much the nature of our agreement. Is this something that you still want to do? And I was very excited about this. And of course, it happened, right? So there's quite a few channels that talked about the idea of pre-incarnation agreements or soul agreements in that way. And that's very much what Adronis was. He's come in at the appropriate time, and I was receptive to all of this, and he came through. It's kind of like he was tapping his foot for 29 years for me to finally come together and share this perspective with him. So since that time, I've been channeling. I've been working together with people, thousands of people over the world. Some people, again, online, like through Skype and through phone, and others through groups, local events as well too. I've toured to Japan. I've gone through South Africa. I've gone to quite a few different places around the world, Canada, United States, most commonly, of course, and just being able to share a lot of this information. And it's vast. There's a vast amount of information. I'm not the most quote unquote gifted psychic there is. There's people I've met who are just incredible, right? And they have incredible psychic prowess. They're great clairvoyance or clairaudience in that sense. I'm just I basically have what's known as strong claircognizance. I just receive these downloads constantly, and I just kind of let the information put itself into words, and this information starts flowing. So whether it's through Adronis or whether it's through spirit as well too, I just let these things come out as they need to, and I'm just kind of amazed about what comes through my mouth, because as I start looking into it a little bit more deeper, just seeing all these things popping up that would confirm it a lot more. And of course, one of the big things that Adronis, not really Adronis, it was before that, I was actually just talking with spirit, with God's energy, and saying about 2037 and 2038, and that relates to the end of an old age and the beginning of a new age. Now, again, humanity is still going to continue on this planet, but this is basically the time of the harvest, what a lot of people may refer to as moving from third density to fourth density, or the fifth dimension, as you would say. And those that are going to start moving into fourth density are going to start feeling that throughout the years to come. It's feeling like they're walking on two different planets at the same time, two different Earths simultaneously. This is what I'm starting to do as well too. I've dreamt, quite a few years in the past about this other Earth as well too, and then there's times where it gets a little bit prominent, and I'm walking upon the beaches of this Earth, and I'm seeing another Earth up in the sky at the same time. So this is again probably the biggest prediction out of anything else, and I wouldn't even really call it a prediction. It's so much a definite that even if I'm saying, well, this may or may not happen, spirit's like, this is not a maybe, this is a certainty, right? The end of the age ends in 2038. So the end of 2037 is the idea of this great shift of an old age that is now going to move into a new age. And between that time, there's going to be 3 days of darkness that will be happening around 2037. So this is, again, all occupying all timelines. And so this is really unavoidable. And so, again, we have about 18 years, and this is going to lead to the end of this age and moving into the new age. Now, there's another person that has been doing this research as well, too, who I discovered just after making this prediction. And his name is John Van Elken. And he was able to also put the pieces together by observing the pyramid measurements, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and using the pyramid inch, and being able to see that our timeline does officially end in 2038. So this is very intriguing. I never expected to get this kind of information. It just kind of came to me. I was very curious about it. And I just asked Spirit, I said, well, is there a date now relating to when this age ends and the new one begins, when the harvest happens? And the answer was yes. And I was just going down the line, okay, when is it happening? When is it happening? And it said 2037. So this is, again, something that I have to share, because whenever I'm getting this information, especially when as big as this, I have to share it. I can't keep it to myself. That's part of why I get a lot of the information I do, because it's kind of like I'm just being this researcher / journalist for spirit and giving this information out to people and helping people with a lot of these techniques that's being given to me, either again through Adronis or other higher levels of spirit consciousness.
Have you seen Adronis?
I have seen visions of him. Yeah, he's come through the years through me. Now, in the majority of the sessions, I'd say about 95% of the time, I don't see him. It's just more so in the idea that you feel him with you. He's connecting with you simultaneously in that way. So I don't always get visions of him. But there are times where he has shown himself. There's times where he has shown himself as kind of the tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Syrian being. They have kind of like pointed ears as well, too. So it almost kind of looks like an elf in that way, but very, very tall, like over 7 feet. And that's just a projection of a form that he had in another dimensional aspect. And that's just how I basically connect with him. Really, where he exists right now, he's much more of an angelic consciousness, and he would exist in the 7th density consciousness level.
When you go into vessel mode or channel mode, being a channel myself, couple of questions. One is, when I receive information, when I wrote the Divine Principle, along with the information, like I think you said, I would begin to see glimpses and have visions of actual events and how the earth is going to look and the building structure and the lack of this and the bounty of that. But when you go into vessel mode or talk to Adronis, however anyone makes sense to anyone.
Mhm.
What does it feel like to be you? Because what it feels like to be me, I feel the swirl, I feel movement, I feel a void of infinite potential, just sitting there
Mhm.
waiting to burst out. What does it feel like to be you? Does it some of those describe that for you, sir?
Well, when I first did it, it was really amazing because I just felt like I was still here, but Adronis is directly in front of me, and he's just sending me all this flow, all this information, and I'm just receiving it in the best way I can. And I'm just kind of in a daydream state, right? I'm not leaving my body or anything of that nature. I'm just kind of in daydreams. I'm kind of hanging around the background. It's kind of like how a person would go to the back seat of a car, and then another person is driving the car. And in that case, Adronis is driving, and so I'm just doing what I can to kind of you know enjoy myself in the back seat while these words are coming out through my mouth, while I'm receiving his thoughts, while I'm receiving his feelings, and it's coming through me in this type of transmission. Another approximation of analogy is being able to see like a radio dial tuning, and you're tuning into a particular station, and Adronis is there. It's not that I feel some big overwhelming amount of energy. When I was first calibrating myself to work with him, I certainly was, but that's not the case anymore. It's a very subtle, it's a very soft energy. Of course, he's very strong in the masculine energy, but it's still a very soft transmission. It's not like it's overwhelming you, it's not bursting your chakra centers open or anything of that nature. He's very gentle when he comes through. It's a very subtle transmission. And like I said, the closest analogy is that radio transmission. And so I just learned to step out of the way. I learned to put my own ego aside. And in the earlier times, that was a little difficult because I would get blown away by what Adronis is sharing through me. I was like, oh, wow, I got to check this out. This is really great information. I can't wait to get it. It's like, okay, focus, focus, right? Stay in center, be here, right? Just try not to get too attached to the information as it comes out. This is just information that you have to share on a neutral level. So I'm a very conscious channel. There are times where I can go a little bit deeper into trance with Adronis and share his information, and I talk a lot slower in that way. And this is because I'm letting him choose the words out of my vocabulary and speak. Whereas commonly, when I bring him in to interact with another person, it's more of a blending consciousness. So that's primarily how I worked. And I worked again about 90% of the time, blending my consciousness together with him, because that's the best way to have an interaction with another person or a group so that Adronis can come together and just kind of guide me towards my vocabulary rather than choosing one word at a time if I was to go deeper.
Marnie Lee from the chat room asked the question, Brad, is there a
Mm-hmm.
chance that humanity's consciousness could speed up that timeline for the new Earth? Fantastic question.
Nope. And I know a lot of people want to say that, oh, we'd love to have that in 2020s, the early 2020s. No, this is the date that's been chosen for many thousands of years, right? This is exactly what Thoth knew when he was helping to build the architecture of this pyramid. It's been foreseen for many thousands of years. What I'm being told is that this is an unchangeable date. This date cannot be changed. And it's not an exact date, right? We basically get it down to a certain year between 2037 and 2038. So that is the span to when it happens. And a lot of people think, well, maybe if we shift the consciousness, well, you guys can't control the collective consciousness, right? It's not really up to you to try and accelerate this date. I mean, it'd be great if that happened. Yeah, it'd be great if we could do it in 2020, right? That'd be fantastic. But it's not up to us, right? This is something that, again, has been chosen by God. Okay, and the best way I can put that is that the Most High has made this decision. The Most High has given this cycle to come to an end at that particular time. And so it's unchangeable. It occupies all timelines. And again, like I said, it's been something that's been prophesied for thousands and thousands of years. And those of you that actually look into John Van Auken's work and you see how he's actually working with the pyramid inch and the pyramid timeline, it is able to accurately predict the rise and fall of empires. It's able to predict when World War I happened. It was able to predict the birth of Jesus. It was able to predict the Second World War. It was able to make all of these predictions spot on, like right on to the very second that it happened. And of course, this is where 2038 is. That's the end of the timeline. So between 2037, 2038, this is when the new age, this new age is coming together. So there's definitely going to be a shift. There's definitely going to be a quote unquote, I wouldn't say if it's an end of time, but it's basically in that sense, closing down an old chapter of what we represent and moving into higher ground. And so between now and the next 18 years is really a transitional period where we're getting all this gunk, getting all this debris out of the collective consciousness and bringing it to the surface and working with it and just attempting to transmute it into higher levels of consciousness. And there's a lot of energies that are behind the scenes that are trying to stop us from doing that because they want to try and still sabotage everything in that way. This goes back into what I've called the soul rebels, right? Is that they're the highest of them all. And these are just rebellious souls that believe themselves to be the God. And they want to wreak havoc with any other particular type of God's creations and try and feel that they are the ones in charge. But they're just slipping, they're losing their power, and they're frantic and they're scared little children, basically. So no, we cannot really speed it up. This again is not a decision made by us. This is something that is a cyclic plan that is not touched within the universal laws as we understand them, all six of them.
A couple of questions or ideas from the chat room about the year 2000, how what you're describing is likened to 2000. My thoughts
Mm-hmm.
about 2000, at least through my work, is that 2000 was the opening of a door, knocking on the door, and the door opens up, and
Mm-hmm.
there's this threshold.
Yep.
2020, as I've been vesseling with my late night presentations, surrounds the idea that the door is really starting to move. In fact, there's a second door, and the wishing tree says now you're in a space where whatever you ask for, consciously or unconsciously, will begin to manifest in your life. So, in other words, karma is not per se so much buffered by time as you are emoting, as you are expressing, as you are simply being. The karmic experience becomes integrated and starts to unfold immediately versus, again, this buffer of time down the way that something may appear. Would you support the idea that 2020, because much of the world's going to be focused on this new decade, everyone's focused on this numerical
Mm-hmm.
icon that looks like a 2-0 and a 2-0. So all this has power, collective consciousness
Mm-hmm.
power. And
Yep.
so now that everyone's going to be focusing on this idea, the wheels picking up, the momentum's picking up, do you see that things are going to begin to manifest out of nowhere? So we have to be very, very clear and
Well,
get not listen to the monkey anymore.
it's not about it manifesting out of nowhere because we can't do that. Everything exists here and now, and we're basically just attracting a lot of those things into our reality appropriately. But really, what 2020 is, it's a next step, it's a next rung of the ladder, and a lot of people are going to start seeing things a lot more clearly. We have, again, throughout this past decade, gone through an incredible experience of looking into a lot of sabotage and looking into a lot of hidden secrets, a lot of hidden truths that have existed behind the scenes that is now common knowledge, right? The idea of pedogate and child trafficking and all of these different forms of events taking place. We're now becoming much more aware of that. We're becoming a little bit more aware of the extraterrestrial presence, about sightings in that way. So we have grown a lot in that sense, but you cannot really get something out of nothing. And none of these things are just going to magically appear. You know, the idea of the cosmos doesn't work that way. Everything is stored, everything is available, and it's all about peeling away layers. So you're going to have certain layers that are going to be peeled off, and you're going to be aware of more information coming through that was not available to us before because we're constantly in a state of buffering. We're constantly in a state of calibration. So it is definitely a step up into the next level. It is definitely helping to see a lot more clarity about where things are going. But between these times now, between 2019, 2024, this is a span of change. And throughout this entire span, within the next over 5 years here, we are going to move into again, seeing a lot of these events that are very harsh, that are very hard pills to swallow coming out. Like I'm talking to a lot of people here and they're thinking that they're just going to pull their hair out of their head. They're so bewildered by what has been happening on this planet, by what's been happening in their personal lives, what's happened in regards to other people's lives in that sense. Everything's being brought out into the open. And again, the reason why this is happening is because light is coming upon the planet, right? We're basically seeing this incredibly powerful energy coming upon the planet right now that is just clearing everything out. It's not that the truth is causing distortion. It's the idea that everything that we have been told for a very, very long time is a distortion. And the light is actually trying to pull that out of us. But because we're so addicted to living in the dark, we try to hold on to that. We try to grab onto that for dear life because we're afraid to feel like we're actually losing our own state of identity. And so this is again why people start to feel like they're frantic, that they're panicking. Again, I've talked to a lot of people in that sense, is that I feel like there's more intense energies on this planet right now than there's ever been. You're absolutely right. It has never been this intense. And this is all part of a very strong transitional cycle. It's been happening since the post-atomic era. And it started off very, very gently, and now it's coming into, the new millennium, and it's now coming into 2020, and it's more intense than it's ever been. The next 5 years are going to be very intense. After that time, there's going to be a span of renewal. And what that means is that there's going to be cleanup. There's going to be new foundations. There's going to be new establishments that are going to be created. And a lot of it is going to be people powered. It's not so much reliance upon the governments. These governments, in that sense, are just showing their true colors. And people are taking the power into their own hands. We're seeing this constantly about people inventing new things, people creating their own businesses and developing these new technologies, creating new organizations. All of this is starting to happen because the idea about how we're going to interact and work together and have products and services in all this way are going to be from people putting the power back into their own hands. It's really going to be a people powered planet. That's where we're going. The government is just going to continue to either dissolve or it's going to fall in line working together with people because people are not going to be suckered in regards to what all these empty promises by governments. You can only do that so much before people say, what you're doing is you're full of crap. I'm not going to follow this routine anymore because when has there been a politician that ever did what I wanted to have done? No, none, never in the history of any politician has that ever happened. The ability for you to create what you want to create has always been based on your choices. And when people start to realize this a lot more, then they're going to start putting the choice, the actions, the willpower into their own hands and starting to manifest something incredible. So it really is, it's a year of exposure. That's what 2020 represents, but it's also a time of foundation and it's a time of clarity. So when we get into 2020, we're going to see more stuff. There's more stuff down the pipe, guys. It's not stopping, right? You got to really brace yourself. And this is going to continue to happen. It's not lightening up anytime soon. We got to get this crap out in the open.
Brad, there's a phrase I use often is get out of the fight
Yep.
of the world. The world is always fighting. What
That's it.
exists out there is a constant. And Brad, I even understand people who want to be anti-racist, but that's part of the noise as well.
Of course. Yep.
It's all part of the
Anytime
noise.
you're going pro, anytime you're going pro or con or anything of that nature, you're basically being part of the extreme. You're not finding balance. It's not the idea of thinking that, oh, I'm proud, and if I'm proud, I'll go into shame. And well, of course, because they're linked together. It doesn't matter if you're pro or you're con. As long as you're playing with the extreme game, you're only going to exist in extremes. You have to work on humility. You have to work on centeredness. You have to work on your own actions. And as you start to correct yourself, you can now work together with other people and help them along with the process as well, too, because you become an authority of your own unique truth.
From the chat room, Abigail Engel says, or asked the question, so many things are presented as truth. How do you know what to believe and what to let go? I say, don't believe
Well, you
anything.
always have to understand that your own truth will always be uniquely your own. Because something works for you does not mean that that's going to work for another person, right? So I can say to people, well, basically how I worked to clean myself up was I started using the power of a notebook and started writing things down. Oh, that's not for me. I don't want to do writing for a notebook. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, there you go. See, I can't basically get that person to see my truth. Because again, if we try to shove our truth down people's throats, we're becoming the problem and not the solution, right? Your unique truth is meant for you, and it's meant for you to embrace that. It's meant for you to understand that. It's not for you to shove down another person's throat, because that's exactly why we have wars on this planet, right? Someone's trying to say, well, this is what needs to happen and this is what needs to be done. They're so demanding with this, and they try to enforce that upon other people. And that, again, is where we get trouble. So the whole key here in that sense is just be wise on your own unique truth. Understand that it's a perspective, that again, it works for you, but it may not work for another person because they're in their own universe. They're in their own reality. You're in yours. And the only way that your truth is ever going to work is when you recognize it and you're working with your own unique truth in your reality, because you're not responsible for another person's reality.
So, Abigail, you asked the question, what to let go of. I would strongly suggest that you let go of any and everything that simply does not bring you joy. Brad?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is that you want to explore these negative aspects. You got to explore your darkness, right? You can't run from it. You have to look into everything about why you're doing what you're doing. And the reason why you do this is because you're still living out old choices that are no longer who you are. So when you start to look at these old choices that basically have brought you into these emotional states where you're feeling very angry, you're feeling very upset, you're feeling very sad, it all comes down to three traumas: abandonment, rejection, abuse. And those three traumas are linked to one source, and that source is lack. So basically, we still try to feed onto old choices that we have made in the past when we were a different person. Right now, in this very moment, in this present, you are a different person than who you were a year ago. You are a different person than you were 5 years ago. You were a different person than you were last week. You want to make sure that all the choice streams that are existing within your reality are still compliant with the type of person that you are right now. And you have to look at those old choices. You have to look and say, oh, I had a friend like this back in the day, but I don't feel that this friend is serving me anymore. I feel like she's just very, very fundamentally negative. I feel that she just wants to bash everything. I can't really share anything with them. Then this is where you want to create closure, because you once opened the door to that friend. If you basically just try and ignore and walk away, that door is still open. You have to make peace and close that door. You can't go through two doors at the same time. So what you're doing is you're realizing that door is open. You want to look at the old choices that have brought that friend into you and saying, at the time I was struggling, I was frantic, I felt like a victim. And I was basically putting a lot of that energy towards this person because she too felt like a victim and felt like she was being abused, etc. So now I don't feel like that. I feel like I can move past the idea of victimhood, but she still represents that aspect of victimhood. So now I need to change my choices about the type of people that I want to align to. So I'm going to bless her. I'm going to wish her well. I'm going to thank her for everything. But the most important thing is that I have to resolve that old emotion that is telling me I still need that particular type of person in my life. I don't. I have to remember to close the door. Close the doors before you decide to move on to your new path.
Brad, have you ever been aboard a craft?
I love the randomness of
I
these
just
questions.
had to, bro. I just had to.
I
Sorry.
am not consciously aware of being on board craft, though I have had dreams of being out in outer space and such like that. But in regards to physical memory, no, no, that's certainly not something that I recall. I have been told that I've certainly been on craft quite a bit, but a lot of it just comes from other different perspectives. So you don't have to be on crafts, really. And if I do, that's great. That's fantastic. I don't want to be on anywhere else but this planet right now. For as long as I'm in this body, for as long as I'm in this life, I want to be right here. And as much as I love those beings, they bring a craft to me. I said, guys, beat it. I'm here to do this. I'm here to help the people. We'll get together after I'm done this life. All right. We'll hang out. We'll have space tea, and that's fine. But right now, I got a job to do. I don't want to be taking on any particular crafts. I got to be here on this planet. I got to help people out. That's what I'm here to do as long as I'm in this form. And when that form ends, wherever I end up is wherever I end up, because I'm already everywhere and everyone and everything, as are all of you.
How was your dreamscape, sir? Being an
Dreamscapes.
open channel not today, your waking state of consciousness, you're here and you're able to function on multiple levels. So I'm just curious to know what happens to you during sleepy pie.
Well, I mean, basically, I dream like anybody else can dream. There's times where I'm just looking into what these dreams are telling me as well, too. A lot of it is that sometimes I'll maybe get into old fisticuffs with family members, and I'll look at that and I'll say, okay, there's still some forgiving that I have to do there. So there's other dreams where they act like games, right? Where I'm just playing around and goofing around and having fun with people, and there's that as well too. So my dreams are diverse, right? There's a multitude of different diverse of qualities within them. So it's again, I still dream. I still have these kind of experiences. There's times where I'm just playing games and having fun, pretending to be a superhero or something like that, flying in the air. All of that's great. But there's times too where I look at old relationships and old things that are coming up in dreams. And it's helping to remind me that there's still some clearing work that I have to do. So that's really the whole idea, is that your dreams are basically being a gauge as well too. They're letting you know about how, if you're liberated, if you're going through states of triumph, or if there's still certain challenges you need to go through. So through that and through certain degrees of metaphorical imagery, I look at that, and that is something that I need to observe a lot more, should there be something that I know I need to correct.
Yeah, I was curious to know if you were having any mystical experiences and sleepscapes that you're
Oh,
so open
I
down
do.
here.
I do a lot, but to me, that's not really important. If whatever
They
I've
sure are
had
fun,
happen,
though.
they're fun, yeah, but
Yeah.
that's not important to me. I mean, really, the whole key here is that we're here on this planet. We got a lot of work to do. This is the serious life you got to take into granted. When you're working with your dreams, look into what they're trying to tell you, because they're messages in a bottle, right? But it's more so about what I'm doing here and how I'm helping myself to correct myself, to work together with others in that way. That's really what is my focus right now. And if I have great dreams, that's fine. But that's not my focus. Is to play around with my dreams and sleep around most of the time and find out what my dreams are trying to tell me. I already have spirit telling me what I need to do, whether I'm sleeping or not.
Brad, would you be open to bringing Adronis in, or is that something you don't do in interview
Oh, of
style?
course, we can definitely do that. Like I said, I'm only good for about another 22 minutes, and
Sure.
then we got to wrap up. But yeah, for the last 20 or so minutes, I can bring Adronis in. And again, if people want to ask questions to Adronis, that's fine as well too. So just take me a minute to bring him through, and we'll get started.
Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here, Center of Light Radio. Tonight, my guest is Mr. Brad Johnson, and we're speaking about the Golden Age 2037, the magical year. He's going into vessel mode.
We are here at this time. We bid you greetings and thank you very much for the opportunity of this interaction today. I am Adronis of Sirius. We say hello to Keith. We say hello to all who are tuning into this broadcast through your internet collective consciousness. We thank you. How may we help you today? Are you still with us?
Yes, I thought you was asking the collective and not Keith. I would like to know what is it that you could share with us that would help us to expand into the fullness of who we are as we move into the window of 2020.
No belief systems whatsoever. Everything pertaining to the aspect of belief is something that you have adopted based upon a characteristic, a personality trait, an identity engram. And so the more that you're playing around with the states of belief, of thinking that something needs to go a certain way without it being malleable, without it being like liquid in that way, you therefore enforce a brick wall upon this particular criteria. And as long as you are enforcing all of these brick walls upon all of these belief systems that represent the mainframe of your psyche, this is what's causing you to feel trapped. This is where the idea that the water is filling up in the room and you have nowhere else to go because you've put all these brick walls around you representing the state of belief. The whole idea is being able to free yourself as greatly as you can. It's the idea of achieving true liberation. And the key to true liberation is the adaptation and adopting of love energy. The more that you're bringing love and compassion and forgiveness into yourself, and you're fueling yourself with that every single moment of every single day as deeply as you possibly can, this is what's going to create dissolvement. And dissolvement will come together when you start looking at all of these old emotional identities, these states of trauma, this lack altogether within yourself, and you bring love to it, to soften it, to make it feel subtle, to make it feel smooth, to make it feel liquid, to make it feel malleable until it turns into vapor. And now those belief systems fall because you now give yourself the permission to work together with love energy to the fullest extent that you can. And now you are completely untethering yourself from your traumas, untethering yourself from conflict, untethering yourself from the harshness that you have placed yourself within. As we have said in times past, reality happens from you. It does not happen to you. There is nothing to you that is having some particular type of authority over than you, other than you, that you are basically giving your own power to. If you feel the government is doing this and doing that, then basically you're saying that you are at the mercy of governmental control. You create that victim consciousness. If you feel that you cannot attract the type of financial abundance that you wish, you again feel that money has a grasp, a hold upon you, and you're preventing yourself from accelerating, from moving yourself into higher ground. And the key to moving yourself in higher ground is the nature of working and adopting and adapting yourself to love energy principles. So the more that you dissolve these belief systems, the more that you'll see how you're connected to everything, to every single person that you meet, to the earth that you are walking upon, to the great oceans, the sky, to this entire planet, to the entire galaxy, to everything that exists, because you are therefore dissolving boundaries. And as you dissolve boundaries, you form new relationships. As you form new relationships, you learn new concepts. You understand new ideas. You have greater understandings within yourself. That is the key to liberation. You are not doing this work to relieve yourself of a certain injury, to basically have some type of short-term relief. No, you are here to set yourselves free. And the key to setting yourself free is the adaptation, and the nature of befriending and becoming the nature of love in its grandest degree.
People throw the word love around all the time. Some people have a grasp, an inkling of it. From your
Yes,
perspective, Adronis, at the seventh density, what is love, if it is at all describable?
the complete and total acceptance, allowance, and appreciation for all that exists. Period. That's it. Now, again, when you say, oh, I love this person or I love that person, but then again, that's the idea that you're conditioning the nature of love, which means you're giving a sliver of an aspect of love, but there's much more conditions upon that property. And the love is literally being overwhelmed by these conditions. Again, the brick walls. So, in that sense, many of you just give slivers of love or drops of love towards these particular effects and saying, I have appreciation for it, I have understanding for it, but. So again, because love is starved, you fill it with the idea of conditioning. You fill it with the idea of beliefs. Love has no beliefs. Love has no barriers. Love has no obstructions. As we've defined it here, love is the acceptance and allowance and appreciation of everything, period. There is nothing here that runs with a but or a therefore or a however or a yet. It is the love, it is the appreciation, it is the acceptance, it is the allowance of everything to be, to allow everything to be, to accept everything to be, to understand everything to be without limits. That's where you put the slivers in, because you're still living within a world of limitation and you still apply these limitations together with yourselves. You don't understand what infinity is. And as long as you don't understand what infinity is, you're still going to try and put a boundary on something. You're still going to have a great deal of love, but it'll have edges to it. It'll have corners. It'll have walls. Even though it might be very expansive, you have not yet learned about the nature of love because you cannot explain it rationally. Even the definition we give you still doesn't give the idea of its exactness. Its exactness needs to be felt. It needs to be truly applied to yourself. And when you have that purity of love flowing through you, you will never have any concern, any conflict, any worries, or any other particular forms of obstructions that you continually create through the downfall of an overly rational mind. It's not to say that logic is the enemy. It's the idea that you put too much logic, too much practicality, too much rationality in everything that you do. And there's very little love that actually comes out of it. Because you say, I will love to the point, but I won't love too much because I'll get hurt. Well, then that's the permission of saying you can't accept love because love has no boundaries. You're only willing to put an itty bitty little smudge of love onto someone or to something or to yourselves. And that's why you're going through these hiccups, these conflicts, because you keep conditionalizing not what is love, but through the idea of conditionalized love illusion.
2037. What can we expect as this? How would you describe this new earth? The beauty, the unity, the
Everything,
peace,
well,
the
firstly,
joy.
you must understand that where you're going in 2037 is the end of an age. And this is leading into what's known as the 3 days of darkness. Now, your Native Americans, your indigenous people, can tell you about the stories of 3 days of darkness because they've experienced it before. This is, again, going to be a time of great cleansing. This is the idea of what we term as 2037 to be the year of climax, which means everything's going to come together full circle. Everything that is happening right now, everything that's been happening within the many decades and many centuries of this age will come to a culmination, not just through that year, but in years previous as well, too. Even what you're going through right now is a culmination of all of that transitional effect. So it is the idea of a bridge. Only a certain amount of people are moving up to that next earth. Because what that requires is people to become much more compassionate towards others. They want to work on correcting themselves. They want to be able to work with that correction. They apply it to themselves, and now they're helping out others. It was even through your own law of one book that said that 51% or more that are much more compassionate and service to others are going to be the graduates into this new earth. That is absolutely correct. Now, again, for those of you who may not prefer percentages, it's the idea that when you're putting a little bit more effort into helping other people each and every single day, that is the idea of you having this graduation potential to move into that next earth. But it's going to be a small number. It's not going to be a lot of people, because we would estimate approximately 80 to 90% of people on this planet are still very much lost with their own states of confusion. Now, that number may increase in the years to come. It may not. But nonetheless, it is going to be a small harvest, basically within what you would know as a several hundred millions. So again, there are those that are going to move into that new earth. A lot of them will be children. There won't be a lot of adults. A lot of them are going to be children. But basically, the whole idea is that children are born into this planet innocently. And so they have that state of innocence and they're moving up in that way. Yes, of course, there'll be adults. And then we'll have more people asking us, oh, Jonas, will I make it to fourth density? Will I be in fourth density, et cetera, et cetera? It's not up to us. You're asking the wrong person here. You have to appeal to God. That's who you have to ask, because it's God's choice. It's the idea that the Most High is making this decision. But again, even after 2038, life will go on here on this planet here in third density. Some of you will completely even deny that something like that happened and will just continue to live through your life. Yeah, we had this 3 days of darkness, but that was just some sort of solar event, etc. And we're still moving on in that particular way. Yes, and you can. And life will still continue here in third density, but it certainly will be a very different experience because you'll have shifted yourself into, in that sense, a higher octave relating to third density, because shortly after that time, global first contact will take place. Whereas when you move into the idea of fourth density, contact on that particular level will be almost immediate. So the whole idea here is that when you move up into fourth density, it's a very different world than what you understand as this one. There's no technology, there's no structures, there's no houses, there's no clothing. So you're basically living on a completely indigenous natural world that has not been touched by human invention at that time. And you will feel a deeper connection to all things. When you move up into the fourth density, you're much more aware of yourself as a person, but you're also aware of the collective. You will feel each other on a deeper level. You will connect with other dimensions simplistically on another level. You will be able to connect with apparitions and different dimensional beings on another level. What was invisible to you here in a third density will become much more visible into the fourth, because you're operating on a different spectrum, where there's actually, in that sense, different light frequencies, different color vibrations on different hue levels that you cannot identify here. It's invisible to your current, shall we say, density pertaining to the mass of this reality. When you move into fourth density, there will be different color arrangements. There'll be different variations of color. Your bodies will feel lighter. You will start to feel that you actually will not have the illnesses that you have on this planet. The illnesses will be much more emotional than the aspect pertaining to physical. So the idea in that sense of having any particular form of negligence or stagnation of yourself would actually be termed as an illness. So they will work more so with the emotional body. And of course, the physical body will still translate that, but you'll have much more of a prominent understanding about what the emotion is to clear that out. Of course, you'll still be going through challenges in fourth density. It's not a quote unquote perfect paradise, but it's something that you are still moving yourself upwards to, and getting much more of a fundamental understanding about how life operates in that way. But you will constantly be guided. You will constantly be supported. You will not be, as you would say, in the dark. Third density is much more denser. It's much more of a dead-like reality. When you move into fourth density, a lot more lighter, a lot more support, a lot more assistance, a lot more fascinations of phenomena that await you all.
I have one more question for you, please. I often say, suddenly through the silence, the new world will appear. In this period, 2020, of high energy movement, though people have done a good bit of work and they may not be, quote, there yet to where they're concrete or really solid inside, in this high energy movement, what would you offer us that will help us stay centered when this high energy movement all around us begins to really start to doing its thing.
Remember your connections to love. That's what it's all about. It's not about having to put your faith in another person. It's not about having to feel that you need to look at some event to distract yourself. It's about the idea that you are befriending, adapting, adopting, becoming love. That's the best way that we can put it, because your love in that way is the cure all to everything, which means you're stimulating yourself constantly on what makes you happy, what makes you joyful, what makes you feel so appreciative of everything that you experience within reality. You use that as the antidote towards everything that pertains to conflict. So the aspect of conflict is also meant to be understood. You're not ignoring it. You're not leaving the door open, as Brad has stated as well too. It's the idea that you're looking into these doors of past choices that you have made that no longer serve you, and you are allowing that door to shut with the energy of love behind your hands. That's what you're doing. Focus on what serves you. And the way that you're going to understand more about what serves you is when you're looking at what doesn't. You're looking at old choices that have nothing to do with you anymore. And you are now making new choices because you have realized that you're a new person. You're not carrying a dead old skin like a snake would when it sheds its old skin. It's not going to take it by its jaws and carry that old skin around. It's going to leave it behind and slither away. That's what you have to do. And that old skin represents old choices, old actions, old decisions, old thoughts, old feelings that have nothing to do with you here and now. And you have to work to make peace with that. To make peace, you have to work with love. Love has to become your greatest companion. And now you're working with love energy to again guide your hands and close that door. You have given closure to the ideas that no longer serve you. They are past instances. They are not who you are right now. So you want to allow that to rest in peace. You want to have closure. You're making new decisions and saying, if I'm always dwelling on this idea of me being a victim and I don't feel like I'm a victim anymore, then I'm going to start acting like this new person who is beyond victimhood, who comes into appreciation, who comes into love, who comes into honoring themselves and to others. That's the type of decisions I want to make. These are the choices I have to put forward. These are the actions I have to take upon it. Let love be the greatest companion you've ever had. And what did we say love energy is? It is the nature of having complete and total acceptance, complete and total allowance, complete and total appreciation for everything. And that's it. That's what you want to work on. More love, less drama, less trauma, less walls that you're building upon yourself. Love is the answer. Always has been, always will be.
Adronis, thank you for sharing your time, your insight with us. I appreciate it greatly. Thank you for being in
We thank you for this interaction. We will now conclude and return to the conduit. One moment, please.
Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here with Brad Johnson. Tonight we've been talking about the golden age, the year 2037, and a little bit of everything in between. Brad, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. You're welcome here anytime. Would you like to leave us with a final message before we sign off?
Yeah, just again, it's just reminding what Adronis just told you guys about the power of love, right? Now, again, you can look at my website. It's newearthteachings.com. I also have another website that has recently come up called healingcodecards.com. They've become very, very big sellers because they do work with sacred geometry and spirit source light as well too. And they've really done incredible healing work on people. The next batch will be out on January 2nd. So there'll be a pre-order campaign that will take place there. So again, you can take a look at healingcodecards.com. There's free samples there you can download. You can check out the testimonials as well. There's also tutorial videos there. So I'm really going to be focusing a lot of my energy in the new year, getting the healing code cards out as much as possible because they are doing wondrous work, and it's a part of a gift from Spirit. And I'm happy to pass that out pass that along as much as I can.
Brad, thank you for being a powerful guest here on Center of Light Radio. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Take care.
Take care. Everyone, what a phenomenal interview. I really enjoy this guy. I really enjoy watching him for my own learning. I go to YouTube, turn on some Brad Johnson, Get at it and have a great time. Everyone, if you would, please, everyone on YouTube, I'm assuming you did if you're on YouTube, and everyone in this room, if you would, please go to youtube.com/Center of Light Radio and subscribe. It only takes a moment. You may not have anything you can give in the form of donating to Center of Light Radio to help the light stay lit, but you can simply just subscribe. That will be sufficient. I appreciate you. Yes, Lincoln, you asked a question a little earlier. That's what I mean when I say you are loved beyond measure. The treasure that we all hold is beyond understanding. Beyond understanding. It's beyond logic. It's beyond rhyme or reason. Keith Anthony Blanchard is Center of Light Radio. I'm wishing you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year 2020. Live in the light.